Matt, speaking of desperate and pathetic British institutions, I wanted to ask you about the BBC and their ongoing campaign against Nigel Farage, who they are now saying maybe said some bad things when he was back in primary school or something like this. Can you enlighten us as to what this latest attempt to nobble Nigel Farage is all about, and how is the Reform Party leader handling all of this?
Well, the first thing to say is Nigel Farage and the Reform Party are #1 in the national polls. They're on about 31, 32%. So as things stand, Nigel Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, obviously, what that has generated is a very hysterical, fanatical response from people within the BBC and elsewhere who are going back to alleged statements that Nigel Farage may or may not have said when he was at school, when he was a child. Such is the desperation of the people who are trying to stop reform from taking over from the establishment that they are taking us all the way back to the 1970s. Did Nigel Farage say this allegedly racist or xenophobic thing? Was he or was he not rude to a fellow classmate? And, fundamentally what this is about is a ruling class that is taking us back 50 years because it doesn't really want to have to answer the questions that Nigel Farage is asking about the state of Britain today. Like, why do we have open borders? Why is immigration out of control? Building on what Rita has just said, why do we have the highest industrial electricity prices in much of the Western world because of net zero madness? These are the things we should be debating, not what Nigel Farage said in 1974.
Rita.
And the state of free speech and state of policing in the UK, this case of a woman who was arrested, had something like 10, 11 officers show up to her house because of a comment she made where she used a homophobic slur in a private text message. Tell us about that, because that story just seems to defy belief that could happen in the UK.
And yet in the UK, nobody is surprised at all, because here we have somebody who has been contacted by more than a few police officers, who was convicted of a so-called hate crime after she used an insulting word to describe somebody who had been involved in a crime. But Rita, this isn't a sole exception. We've had police visiting parents who have complained about their school in a WhatsApp group. We've had armed police picking up the comedian Graham Linehan, who helped to write the popular comedy Father Ted. Well, he was arrested at an airport for making comments about transgender ideology on social media. What we have in this country is an onslaught against free speech, against free expression, that is using hate laws, that is using a new definition of Islamophobia, which is coming down the track. They want to try and control what we can and cannot say about Islam, and which has been basically curtailing the national conversation, controlling it, so we cannot speak out about these issues to do with migration, diversity, even what we think about local public services. So this is a really serious moment, even though many people might roll their eyes and say, well, this is just a ridiculous example of police overreach. It really isn't. This is a sinister, I would argue, coordinated attack on our free speech and free expression in the very home, we should remember, of free speech and individual liberty.
It's horrific what is happening there in Britain, Matt. In London, Sadiq Khan, the mayor there, seems to have got his priorities mixed up as usual. He's spending $250,000 on diversity training. Not much money seemed to go on the annual Christmas tree, however. London's Christmas tree in Trafalgar Square has come in for a lot of criticism of being the saddest, most pathetic-looking Christmas tree in years, with a kind of string of lights that you'd buy down at Woolworths or Bunnings or somewhere. It's a tragic... it looks absolutely pathetic. Have you been down to Trafalgar Square, Matt, to check this out?
Well, that Christmas tree is actually right around the corner from my office, so I can't avoid that Christmas tree, and the depressing symbol of what's happened to our capital city. Let's just be clear for a minute. This is the London Labour mayor, who also clearly cannot be bothered to investigate rumours of extensive grooming gang activity of young white working class girls, according to social workers and charity workers, being abused in our capital city. He's downplayed that issue. He's invested millions in diversity training, in hate laws, in warning people on the London Tube about hate crimes. We're being bombarded with posters and billboards about what we can and cannot say, yet crime is completely out of control. Shoplifting has never been as high in London as it is today, and nearly 120,000 smartphones were stolen from people last year alone. I would like the mayor of London to get back to doing what the leader of the capital city should be doing, which is tackling crime, improving public services. But he won't do that because what Sadiq Khan is, he's a virtue signaling, hardcore leftist who constantly engages in identity politics, has almost no interest at all in the white British majority in our country, has just rebranded London trains, and other buildings to commemorate lots of diversity stories in our history, but yet has just gone to a Christmas Carol service looking completely lost. People will find the footage online, not sure what he's singing, not even sure probably what this service is even all about. And I just think this, again, is a symbol of broken Britain. This is why reform is #1 in the polls. This is why we're seeing unprecedented political changes in our country, because the Brits have had enough of it.
James.
Well, Matt, we talk about, here and on this show all the time, these various outrages, this free speech violation, this and that and the other thing. But at the same time, this Labour government is also presiding over a real assault on 800 years of democratic tradition. And I'm talking about the end to many jury trials, people losing the right to jury trials. We're talking about the end of the hereditary House of Lords. We're talking about even local government elections, I've told, have been cancelled in some places. It feels like while we're all talking about these sort of headline-making issues, there is a real genuine assault on democracy that if somebody like a Donald Trump tried it in the United States, people would be losing their mind. And yet the left seems to think, oh, well, this is okay to lose all of these rights guaranteed by the Magna Carta and other institutions in Great Britain, which is the basically mothership for democracies like Australia, like the United States, like Canada, like democracies around the world.
Well, I agree with everything you've just said. I would just add to it. We've just had £70 billion worth of tax increases in this country that were not in a single party manifesto. We are now being told we will have to take digital identification, digital ID. That was not in anybody's manifesto. We've just been told this week facial recognition surveillance is going to be rolled out in pretty much every town centre. That was not discussed previously. Jury trials are apparently now being cut back. Free speech is being undermined. Our borders are wide open and nobody wants to fix them. And our history is constantly being undermined and repudiated. We're only really told that we need to feel ashamed of British history. We never hear our leaders tell us something positive about who we are and where we came from. We never hear the other side of the story. And so you're right to say, we can all get outraged about the stories that we read in the newspapers. But again, I'm going to say again, something very sinister is unfolding in the United Kingdom. Everybody who lives here can see it, and everybody who knows this country, who's living in the Anglosphere, who's living in Western nations and is familiar with what the UK used to be, they can see it too. And I think this again is why we're seeing the Labour government on just 14% in the polls this week. They've never been as low in history. And Nigel Farage, #1, heading into government. Because if we don't get change in this country, I'll be very real with you, I'm not sure what country is going to be left at the end of this ongoing experiment.
Matt Goodwin, extraordinary. I've always said Nigel Farage will be in Downing Street and roll on reform. Britain so desperately needs that change. Have a very Merry Christmas, Matt. I'm sure the Christmas tree in your house is probably more impressive than the one in Trafalgar Square. So I'm sure you'll have a great Christmas despite all that's going on in the UK. And we'll speak again in the new year. Thanks so much. That's Matt Goodwin.